I am Laura Dixon, and you are listening to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast, episode number 60, A Gift to My Son. Welcome to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast. I'm going to teach you how to get out of your diet brain so that you too can be naturally thin for life. No counting, restricting, or obsessing. I am going to take the mystery out of it for you so that you can become naturally thin starting today. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. On episode 50, I shared a gift to my daughter. And while I do think that women have a slightly different struggle with losing weight because of societal and cultural influences, I also think men struggle in a similar way. And as I was thinking about that episode, A Gift to My Daughter, I was thinking a lot about the gift to my son. And it's very similar in many ways. And of course, when I think about my son, I get to give him the gift of listening to his body and allowing his hunger and satisfying his hunger and all of that. But I also have this gift that I imagine giving to him that I'm going to share with you in this episode. And I think it's really important for us to all experience this gift. And so I want to share it with you. And before I get started on that gift, as a reminder, if you're loving the podcast and enjoying the podcast, if you can subscribe, write, and leave a review, that helps other people find the podcast. I actually recently just got a message from someone who has been listening to the podcast, and she said she's finally below a weight that she never thought she would be able to get to. And she said she had tears in her eyes, even as she was writing that message, just from listening and implementing what I teach you in this podcast. And so it really is my mission and my goal to help as many of you as possible end the obsession and really have the freedom that comes with easily allowing your hunger and satisfying your hunger and being in a body that feels really comfortable. And that to me is what being naturally thin is. So if you write a review and leave a review, it helps the podcast platform suggest the podcast to other people. And so then they get to experience that with all of us. So I say thank you in advance. And I know the people that haven't found it yet also say thank you in advance. So we all have traits that are more stereotypically defined as being masculine or feminine. For example, I would describe many of my traits as masculine. Like in our society, I mean how we've collectively agreed what masculine and feminine traits are. So I think there's a lot of stereotypes, of course, around all of this. But when you think about how we collectively have sort of agreed without ever questioning what masculine or feminine traits are, for example, for me, some of my masculine traits are that I'm super ambitious. I love making money. I am so determined. I'm incredibly productive in a stereotypically masculine, very driven, focused way. Like I knock shit out when I'm doing my work. I don't do drama. Girlfriends that I used to have that would gossip and were really needy and attached and like, oh my gosh, you didn't message me back and you didn't call me back in this kind of unhealthy way, this codependent way, for me was always like a flat out no. Like I just don't do that. If that's you, I'm not the friend for you. All of my girlfriends are super independent and we love seeing each other and we're all really ambitious and we love working, we love our careers, but we also love our families. And so we don't need to see each other every week. We can go months and months without seeing each other. We're extremely independent. And then we do get to see each other. It's amazing and it's great and we have a fun time. There's just no dependency. I also don't do BS. I don't do drama with friends. Like it's all just a no. I don't love small talk. I don't really do small talk. It's just not who I am. I'm really direct and you'll always know what's going on for me. On the other hand, I also have many stereotypically feminine traits where I might cry during movies or even on a rare commercial when I do watch a commercial sometimes. I feel a lot of empathy. I feel a lot of compassion for myself, for my clients, for everyone that I serve, for everyone that I help, for my children, for my husband. I love my children. I love my husband, but I wouldn't call myself quote unquote kid person when I think about kids. I'm more of a my kid person. So I love my kids. I love other kids, but I wouldn't kind of define myself as being like really into all the kids, right? So when I think about myself in the more stereotypically masculine or feminine traits, some of the other feminine traits I have are that I love holding hands with my husband. I love affection, that type of affection, the holding hands. I am super curious about other people and their minds and my mind. And I'm really curious about creating success. So I love making money, but I also love empathy and love for my clients in making money. So a lot of how I think about myself goes against a lot of societal stereotypical norms. And if you noticed what I described, when we think about stereotypically masculine or feminine traits, they're almost all emotions. Successful, ambitious, determined, focused, clear, direct, independent, empathetic, love, compassion, curiosity, understanding, affection. All emotions. So while, yes, I'm 100% giving the gift to my son that he doesn't have to eat when he is not hungry and he can listen to his body and eat food that feels good in it, but in order to do that, the even greater gift, which I actually think they go hand in hand because it's hard to listen to your body when you don't understand the next point. But the even greater gift is, and one of the most proud gifts that I imagine giving him, is that emotions are not a woman thing. Emotions are a human being thing. And we are all emotional beings. Being a man and understanding his emotional well-being makes him stronger and more of a man and not less. And now, yes, of course, I'm a woman. And so that is my experience. And so I'm describing this gift that I imagine giving to him from the perspective of a woman and from the perspective of him being a man. But I'm going to give you some examples. But for me, when I think about him, his ability to articulate what he thinks and feels will help him create the life he wants, not the life he feels the societal pressure to create. I imagine that will be so freeing. For men, I think we collectively often think that you have to, quote unquote, power through, which means when you're trying to power through something that you're resisting different emotional experiences. But what if, as a man, my son can create the life he wants by using his thoughts and using his feelings? We're all usually on board with, yeah, we'll use our thoughts, but we kind of skip the part where we use our feelings. But you can't use one without the other. And I love using my feeling of success. I love using my feeling of pride and my feeling of determination. But I also love using the feelings of love and empathy and compassion. They're not mutually exclusive because that is how it actually works. The action we take or we don't take, which of course all of the action we take or don't take is how we create our lives. All of that action or inaction is always because of an emotion, whether or not you are aware of it. Everything you do or don't do or avoid is because of an emotional experience. So for him to understand his own emotional well-being and understand his emotions isn't a woman thing. It's just an everyone thing. It's a human being thing. So often I think we hear that boys can be quote unquote too sensitive. And I'm talking here about quote unquote too sensitive as emotionally sensitive, not necessarily sensory stimulation, that type of sensitive. But when we think about emotionally, quote unquote, too sensitive, no one would ever say that if a boy was really determined and focused, that he was too sensitive to his emotions. But feeling determined and focused are emotions. Society and how we culturally have agreed often wants boys to have those types of emotions, successful and determined and focused. And we only use the too sensitive label when a boy or when a man is experiencing what we would describe as a stereotypically feminine emotion, like sadness with crying, or maybe fear or uncertainty or empathy. But they're all emotional experiences. If you're going to be sensitive to feeling focused and determined and successful and proud and ambitious, that means you also must learn to be sensitive to the other ones. To being empathetic, to love, to uncertainty, to fear. I think about the generational change this will have for my son and his children. Now, he's 3, and I hope he has kids because I love having kids. And someday I hope he has my grandchildren or his partner has my grandchildren. But obviously, whatever he decides. But right now, he's 3. So in my mind, I imagine him having children one day. I imagine what that would look like for him and his children when he understands his emotional well-being, and what a gift to his family. What a gift to every single person he interacts with. And yes, of course, this is also a gift to my daughter, but how I thought about the gift to my daughter and the gift to my son are both based on a lot of stereotypical norms that we have based on whether we're a man or a woman. So this gift that he has, and this gift I imagine him giving to every single person he interacts with, sometimes we think that being in touch with our emotional well-being means crying all of the time. So when I imagine this gift, I'm not imagining him crying all of the time and that just being him being consumed by that in that way. Maybe there's times in his life that he will be, right? But listen, I am more in touch with my own emotional well-being than ever before, and I actually cry less, interestingly enough, because it doesn't feel out of my control. And when I do cry, it's never a problem. Maybe crying is a podcast for another day, right? But there's this stereotype that men who are in touch with their feelings, understand their emotional well-being, cry all the time. But guess what? Feeling proud and accomplished and strong and love and attraction, all still feelings. There is this fear that if men are in touch with their feelings, they will create less money or less success, which is kind of the pressure we put on men in our society. I think we often think women need to look pretty and nice and thin, and they kind of just need to be there for us to look at. And then men are supposed to go out and create the money and the success and support like the damsel in distress, perfect looking woman. So while a lot of us, right, are on board about the stereotypes and the pressure we put on women and how ridiculous it is, I think often we don't think about how ridiculous it is for men as well. And so I think about that for my son. And the fear that if men are in touch with their feelings, they will create less money or less success, I actually think the opposite is true. That the more in touch with their emotions, the more money and the more success they will create in their lives and however they define it. I'm going to give you an example here. So I want you to imagine, I'm imagining my son, but imagine a man in your life being able to go throughout the day, understanding that his thoughts create his feelings. His own mind is what creates his emotional experience, that no emotion is ever a problem. And he knows how to allow that emotion truly without feeling like it's a problem when it comes up for him. And then guess what might happen? Imagine him in a meeting at work with his team, and someone says something to him, and he has a thought that creates a feeling of anger. So someone in that meeting said words, and those words out of the other person's mouth, then my son, or then the man you're imagining, has a thought about those words that creates the emotion of anger in his body. If my son can understand that his own thoughts create that anger and not the other person, and he can allow that vibration of anger in his body without it being a problem, and he doesn't react out of it, but he can react in a much calmer way than if he would have reacted out of anger, so that he can be more clear and more articulate, how much more successful will he be? Let's say instead of feeling really angry, and because when we feel anger and we think it's caused by someone else and not our own thoughts. And now, side note, it doesn't mean you don't want to be angry sometimes, right? But even just understanding that his thoughts about the words the person said created the anger, then allows him to not yell at the employee and, let's say, fire him on the spot because he was so angry about the words that he said to him in a meeting with his entire team. So instead of doing that, instead of yelling at this person, firing him and giving them all that message and like freaking them all out and making everyone really scared to say anything in a meeting, instead of that, he allows his anger. He understands it's from his thought. He allows that vibration in his body. Then maybe say he calmly talks to the employee separately. Maybe he still ends up firing him. Maybe not. Maybe he goes on a performance improvement plan. Who knows? So maybe the end decision is still that he fires that employee. Let's say he said something very inappropriate or for whatever reason would be a good reason to fire him, right? So it might still even be the same result. But when you think about those two situations, reacting out of anger versus understanding the skill of allowing the anger because it's from his own thoughts, allowing that vibration to be there, and then from a much calmer, clearer place, making a decision, he's going to have a ridiculous amount of success. That doesn't mean he is weak because he understands and allows his emotion. He's actually stronger because of it. He's stronger because he understands he's the one creating it, that it doesn't matter what anyone else says or does. He gets to decide whether or not he wants to feel anger and act out of anger. He's stronger because no matter what anyone else says or does, he's the one in charge of his own emotional well-being. And imagine the difference in that boss if you're one of the other employees. How much more respect and loyalty and drive to do good work would you have for the boss who doesn't just snap anytime someone says something? How much more likely would you be to question things and to bring up ideas and have different thoughts and brainstorming sessions and be more innovative and creative? You, as one of the other employees, would be much more likely to do all of those things. And guess what? In turn, all of those employees are going to be creating a lot more success for the boss, which in this example is my son or the other man you're imagining. So he's going to have a lot more success, a lot more respect and loyalty, and a much more enjoyable experience of his own life, all because of feelings. So what an amazing lifetime gift I get to give to my son to show him that emotions aren't a woman thing. They're a human being thing. And because he understands how to allow his emotions, that he has the ability to question and change his thoughts in a way that serves him, he's going to enjoy his life and he's still going to experience the spectrum, the array of different emotional experiences, but he'll be much stronger in his experience of it. And the same gift I imagine for my daughter, of her having that same emotional experience where she understands how to allow her emotions. She understands that she can think on purpose and feel on purpose, and that she also doesn't have to fight or resist emotional experiences because they're never a problem because she knows how to allow them. Here's the other thing. I actually have two more things. Here's the first. Man or woman, all overeating is emotional overeating. Now, side note, if you have insulin resistance or a diagnosis that has your hormones out of whack, where your body literally cannot regulate hunger and feelings of satisfied, that's a little bit different. So we're not going to talk about that right now, maybe for another day. But for most of the rest of us, overeating is emotional. Always. Because your body, in and of itself, never wants to overeat. Your body only wants to eat when it's hungry. That's why food tastes better when it's hungry. It's your body's way of telling your brain, hey, we don't need food now because we're not hungry. It doesn't taste as good. Your body only ever wants to eat food that feels good in it. It doesn't want to overeat in quantity. That's why when you are really hungry and you eat, the first few bites taste so good, the last few bites don't taste as good because it's your body's way of telling your brain, hey, we're good, we don't need any more. So if your body never wants to eat unless it's hungry, it never wants to eat past the point of being satisfied, and it never wants to eat food that doesn't feel good in your body, only your brain does. Only your brain ever wants to overeat. And only your brain wants to overeat because it wants a distraction. And a distraction from what? An emotion. Even the desire and the urge to eat are emotions. Now, ones that we want. I want to have the desire to eat, but I understand that I get to create that desire to eat on purpose, that it's actually an emotional experience, and one that I want when I'm hungry and one that I don't want when I'm not hungry. But we have to understand how our emotions are created with our thoughts and how to allow different emotional experiences so that we don't feel like we're trying to fight them. Because when we're trying to fight them, we often want to eat. That's where on a diet, the white knuckling and the willpower and the deprivation and the restriction all feel so hard, is because we're trying to resist different emotional experiences and a lot of other things like not listen to our body, right? But when you can allow your emotions and understand your emotional experiences, it all becomes so much easier. This is also how your life stops feeling out of control, and especially your relationship with food. I'm going to leave you with this last example, and I might have already mentioned this before, but Ben, my son, is doing swimming lessons. Now, the first few we were in the water with him, either me or my husband as the parents. And then you move on and you're not in the water. And so he's with just him and the other kids and the instructor. And he had a lot of fear about me not going in this first session that we had. There were tears, there was fear. And so I didn't force him in, of course. We talked about it, but there was a lot of crying. It wasn't my favorite emotional experience with the other parents watching, all of it. But then here's what happened. We talked about it, and he's 3, by the way, but we talked about his fear. We talked about what it was and what it felt like, and that it was okay for him to feel afraid. That he didn't need to be afraid because the instructor was there and I was watching really close by, but because it was something different that he might be afraid. He didn't need it, but he might be, and that it was totally okay. The next time he went to swimming lessons, he told me, as I'm holding his hand and I'm walking him over to the instructor, he told me, "You know, Mommy, I'm a little afraid, but it's okay. I can be afraid and I can still get into the water." What a massive difference. Because he, even as a 3-year-old, is starting to understand and allow his emotions. So to his future wife, you are pretty freaking welcome. Now, friends, I have created an on-demand program for all of you that walks you through the exact process to become naturally thin for life. I teach you how to unwind your diet brain, how to never fear hunger, how to make decisions around food that serves you, and the exact process to start doing this work of allowing your emotions. I also teach you how to match your desire for food with your ideal body weight so that you can reconnect your brain and your body to experience the pleasure of food together. So that it stops feeling like a battle, so that it stops feeling like your brain is working against you and it starts working for you. So in the Naturally Thin for Life program, you have lifetime access to this program and you have everything you will ever need to become naturally thin. And you can come to weekly live calls and get any of your questions answered. And the best part, you either love it or I give you your money back. So if you're interested in learning more, head over to lauradixoncoaching.com/work with me. That's lauradixoncoaching.com. Click on the Work With Me tab, and the link will also be in the outro. Have an amazing day, my friend. I will talk with you all next week. Friends, are you ready to put the struggle and obsession behind you for good? I will teach you how to take this work and really apply it to your specific brain and your specific body so that you come back to your innate brain-body connection. Your brain and body start to work in sync, and when they work together, it stops feeling like your brain is your biggest obstacle, and it feels like it's finally working for you. You easily allow your hunger and satisfy your hunger, and being naturally thin becomes just a part of who you are. The obsession fades into the distance, and it feels effortless. Head over to lauradixoncoaching.com/work with me to learn more.